Hey everyone, welcome to Data Umbrella's webinar. I'm going to do a brief introduction, about 5 minutes, and then Claire will do her talk. And if you have any questions, ask in the chat, and we will answer questions at the end of Claire's presentation. This is being recorded, and it will be up on our YouTube within a day or so. Data Umbrella is a community for underrepresented persons in data science. We organize data science and open source events. We are a nonprofit organization. This is the team that makes it happen. My name is Reshma. Beryl is out of Nairobi. Christina is out of Brooklyn. And Sangam is out of India. We have a code of conduct, and we thank you for helping to make this a welcoming, friendly community for all that people want to keep returning to. There are various ways to support Data Umbrella. The first and foremost is to follow our code of conduct, and we'd love it if you could share our events with other people in your network. And we have some open source projects as well where people can contribute to. We do timestamps for our videos. We have a new website. We have a Sprint website. Check out our GitHub. You can also donate to our nonprofit. We're on Open Collective, and you can find us there. We have quite a library of videos. We have over 120 videos now. And so, subscribe to our YouTube channel to see all the other events. We have a lot of libraries such as career advice, playlists, data visualization, scikit-learn, PyMC, NumPy, just a handful. We have a monthly newsletter on Substack, dataumbrella.substack.com. So, I'm going to share the link in the chat in a bit. These are the social media platforms where we're the most active. Meetup is the place to go to find out about upcoming events. YouTube is where our videos are, our monthly newsletter. GitHub has our projects. This webinar platform has live captioning. At the top right, you'll see CC for closed captioning. So if you want a transcript of the presentation, just hit that and you'll get that. We also have an online suggestion box, which I will share in the chat. But if you have any suggestions for future event topics, if you have any feedback on this event, if you want to share any technical issues you've encountered, or if you'd like to do a presentation for Data Umbrella, let us know. Our next event after this one is on October 8th. It is Polars for Data Analysis in Python, and that should be a great talk. Today's talk is Best Practices for Creating a Data Science Team. Dr. Clair Sullivan is currently the founder and CEO of Clair Sullivan and Associates, a company dedicated to providing data science consulting services. Her career spans over 22 years of working with data with interest in graphs, natural language processing, and generative AI. She has worked in a variety of settings ranging from director-level roles to individual contributor at a variety of startups to academia and the federal government. You can find Claire on LinkedIn. And with that, I will be handing over the microphone and screen share to Claire.
Excellent. Thank you, Reshma. It's great to be here. Glad to be invited back. And just thanks everybody for tuning in or checking the video out after the fact. I'm going to start by sharing my screen here, and I will answer the very first question. So the very first question is always what? It is, are the slides going to be made available? And the answer to that question is yes. You can go to my GitHub here, and you will see a link in the top under talks and presentations, which will take you to a repository with all the slides that I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so let's kind of dive into it here. The title of this talk, Best Practices for Creating a Data Science Team. This is just something that I'm kind of passionate about, which has to do, we're going to talk a lot today about data culture and how you create data culture and why it's important. And so these are kind of my observations of working with a variety of data science teams over the past 22 years, even before it was called data science. But let's just kind of dive in, and we're going to have some kind of ugly truths here. This is just the obligatory agenda. if we're talking about data science teams and how to make them successful, that implies, wait a second, are they not successful? So we're going to start with some uncomfortable facts about data science and the data science products. And I'm going to turn this into what I call a data fable here. I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. And then I've got this other thing that I call the upside down approach, and how it's, when you see it happening, and when I talk about the data fable and we get into the upside down approach, when I've talked about this before, I get a lot of people in the room data scientists who've been working for a few years, and they're like, oh yeah, this is really painful. How can we get out of this, this negative side of data science, and fix this thing that I call the upside down approach? And then just kind of some lessons for the future of where I see that history is repeating itself here. Before we get too far in, we've got the chat going, and I have the chat window open. I'm not necessarily going to be looking at it all the time, so there will definitely be QA time at the end. If I happen to see questions pop up in the chat window, great, but probably the time that you'll be able to catch my attention most for questions will be at the end. Okay, so let's get into some of these stats. All right. So I was doing some looking around various literature here at what chief data officers are saying about their companies and the success of their companies. And starting off by companies who are starting to create these roles of chief data officer, only 40, this is a survey, by the way, of something like 150 chief data officers from Fortune 1000 companies. And of the respondents, 40.5% said that people even knew what the role of a chief data officer was, despite the fact that almost 83% of the responding companies had one. So they have these people whose job it is to kind of shepherd the whole data process, and yet nobody really knows what they should be doing. Okay, well, that's not great. And I will tell you right now that I'm looking at two monitors, so if you see me looking over here, that's what's going on here. In 2003, in this data and analytics leadership annual executive survey, which is the linked at the bottom here, almost 88% of companies said that they were increasing their spend in data initiatives, especially in data modernization, as their highest priority. 24% identified their organizations as being data-driven. Okay, so let's stop and think about that one. Slightly less than 1/4 of companies in these Fortune 1000 companies, slightly less than 1/4 considered themselves data-driven. That's mind-boggling to me. 20.6% identified that they have a data-driven culture, or they have a data culture at all. So, we'll talk about what we mean by data culture here, but people aren't basically saying that they value data, is what they're saying in that statement. Almost 80% cited cultural issues as the greatest obstacle for delivering business value from data investments. So you've got 20% saying they don't have a developed data culture, yet almost 80% saying the lack of that culture is what's keeping them from getting business value. Okay, so these are some really kind of scary statistics if you think about it. These are big companies. These are publicly traded companies who are saying, yeah, we don't really know what to do with data. Okay, some more stats. Less than half of an organization's structured data is being used in making decisions. Why are you collecting data if you're not using it to make decisions? And then look at that sub-bullet. Less than 1% of unstructured data is even analyzed or used at all. So like 99% of unstructured data is just kind of sitting there doing whatever. More than 70% of employees have access to data they shouldn't have. 80% of analyst time is spent just discovering and preparing data. And those of you on this call, that's probably not a surprise to you. I say, when I give talks, I say at least 80% of my time as a data scientist is actually a data janitor, finding the data, cleaning the data, getting it ready. And then, we can have all kinds of discussions about data breaches and data being in silos and data technology that isn't up to the demands the company is placing on it. This is not setting up a good scenario here, is what I'm hoping you're taking away from this. But here's the one that just kills me. 87% of data science projects never make it to production. So you have teams of data scientists, and data scientists, let's be real, are not, the cheapest employees at a company. And 87% of their work is not making it into use. What is up with that? Okay, so this is why I decided that I was going to create this data fable to try and explain this to people. Perhaps some of you on this call have read this book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's practically mandatory reading if you're going for an MBA, which I happen to be doing that. And this Lencioni's book here, I really encourage everyone to read this book, especially if you're in management or thinking about going into management. Really interesting book. And he starts off with what they call Lencioni's Fable, where he creates like this story around some fictitious C-suite individuals and how it is that they're relating to each other, how they communicate to each other. This is a book all about improving communications during, some difficult times at a company. So I decided to take that same idea and I created a data fable. And I'll tell you, I started my consulting freelance company here a little less than a year ago, and my marketing department, I do not fund them very well. So you'll see that reflected in the quality of my graphics here. So here is the beginning of the data fable. We have the CEO, and the CEO is thinking here that, oh boy, geez, all of my competitors, they're getting data scientists, and if I'm going to remain competitive, I have to do it too. So the FOMO, the fear of missing out, is real with the CEO. The CEO perceives a threat, and so when a CEO perceives a threat, they're going to act on it. So CEOs contacts HR and says, hey, hire me some data scientists. And HR says, yeah, let's do that. But we haven't had them before. What's a data scientist? And they sit around and they talk about it. And they all have to be PhDs and experts in natural language processing and 10 plus years of experience with PyTorch, because the CEO heard about PyTorch and thought it was great. And yeah, if you're doing the math, PyTorch has not existed for 10 more years. So, and actually I have seen that exact thing on a job ad before. Somebody wanted more than 10 plus years of experience with PyTorch. This is, these are taken from real life experiences here. So, yes, the HR is primed and ready to go to hire a bunch of data scientists. And they hire this team of data scientists, and they're excited and they're ready and they're here. And they get there and they're like, okay, who's our manager? What's mentoring look like here? What projects are we assigned to? Who's our PM? Okay, all very reasonable questions. And by the way, this exact scenario has happened to me. So the CEO is just like, what? Okay, so then the data scientists start trying to figure out what they could work on, because it's not like they were told by anybody what they're going to work on. Because remember, they were just hired because everybody else was getting data scientists. So the CEO needed to get them too. And then they say, where's the data? Oh, okay, well, so then IT comes in. Well, you can't have access to the data because you don't have a business need. Okay, probably there are people in this call who've heard this before somewhere. We can't give you that data because there's no data governance process, but we'll get there. I'm jumping ahead. Okay, so IT then says, okay, but we need to give the data scientists something because we have data scientist tiers and they're sad because they don't have access to data. Okay, so then they say, aha, here's an Excel spreadsheet. It's got some data that makes you happy, right? No, that does not make a data scientist happy. My day as a data scientist is very sad if I have to work in Excel spreadsheets. Okay, so then the data scientists start coming up with their own ideas. Well, if we could just collect this type of data by making this pipeline, we can somehow get it. Now, mind you, they still don't know what problem they're solving. They're just going to go out and collect data. Okay, and data scientists are not data engineers. One of the things that I hope you take away from this talk is data engineers are awesome people. We need more of them. You need to hire lots of them. I think the number I heard, 3 data engineers for every data scientist is a good number. So the data scientists, they start creating pipelines, which are not good pipelines. They're not efficient pipelines because they are not data engineers, but they're doing what they can. Okay, so and eventually they get some usable data, and now we're cooking. Here I've got the little smoke coming out of the computer indicating that the computer's now working really hard because now they have data that they can do stuff with, and they finally get to do what they've been hired to do and are good at. Now, notice how many slides we've had to go through before the data scientists actually get to start doing what they're hired to do and are good at. Okay, that's probably not a good sign. Okay, so now they have results and they are anxious to show these results to people. Look at this thing that we made. Isn't it great? But like, they don't have anybody championing them because remember, there was no manager and there was no PM. Okay, and yes, I have lived that life and I know a lot of other people have as well. And so they spend a lot of time trying to get onto people's calendars and explain the value of what they've done. And look at this thing that we made. And isn't this great? Oh, and then there's more data scientist tears because they can't get on people's calendars and people don't recognize that what they've made is great. And then we have the CEO who's all mad saying, wait a second, I spent all of this money on a team and they haven't created anything of value. Where's my return on my investment? Where's my ROI? Okay, so that's, unhappy CEO. And then the data scientists are like, okay, well, I'm going to leave. And it's what they might be doing it voluntarily. They might be doing it involuntarily because there's nothing for them to do. There's no job impact or satisfaction. They're not being mentored and growing in ways that they are looking for. There's no long-term job prospects at the company. Okay, and so what does that result in? That results in CEO tears. Okay. That is the end of the data science fable. And I apologize if this is, resonated very strongly with you when I've given this data science or the data fable before. I'll get people who come up to me afterwards and say, oh my gosh, you've described my past 3 jobs or something like this. I've lived that job too. I'm sorry that you've had that experience. I would like to kind of break this apart and analyze it of how it went wrong and how to fix it. Okay, so let's start from the very beginning here. We've got the CEO with FOMO, fear of missing out. Okay, what they did, they went and hired a bunch of people, but they did not identify a business problem that could only be solved with data. Now, we're going to come back to that word only here in a little bit. There was no business problem. There was meaning, why are you spending money? Okay, just point blank. Why are you spending money if there is not a business problem to be solved? Okay, so now our next step here was the CEO and the HR person were getting together, and they didn't have the business problem. Therefore, they could not identify the requirements and the skill sets on the data scientists. Here we have like this fictitious, they have to, have PhDs, expert in NLP, PyTorch, all of that. Well, if you're trying to solve a forecasting problem, you don't need any of those things, right? So they hired exactly the wrong people because they didn't know what business problem they were trying to solve. Okay, so next you got the data scientists coming in all excited. So here's another problem. You remember we were talking about how I said data engineers are really important here and that you need to take that away from here. Data engineers were not brought in because the CEO and HR did not identify data engineers as being required because, again, no business problem. Okay. Also, what was not here is reflected by the fact that IT would not give them access to the data was that there was no data governance put in place before bringing the data scientists on board. Okay, so those are 2 things that should have happened before any data scientists were hired at all, right? So then when we come to next here, we've got the team asking where the data is. Okay. There is no data yet, as you recall in this story. They had to go out and collect it, if you recall. So the business problem had no data. Well, there was no business problem, so therefore there's no data to solve the business problem because nobody knew they needed it. Okay, so then here's the governance problem. So siloing of data, this is something that's very common in a lot of places. Siloing of data indicates a problem of data culture. When you do not recognize who needs to have access to what data, it means you cannot solve data problems. Okay, so this is a biggie. Then here's the data scientists who are going and creating their own pipelines. Again, this is the sequencing of hiring problem here. Then they created their solution, but again, they didn't have a PM. So there was nobody saying, hey, we care about what you're creating. Why don't you create this thing? Here's a business problem. There was no person whose job it was to take their work and interface it with the rest of the company. So again, hiring sequence problem. Okay, let's kind of recap. What they went for first was people. Okay. And people are your strength. Any business leader will tell you that, but they're only your strength if you hire the right ones. They didn't hire the right ones in the right order. Second, data. Okay, they went after the data next. The data scientists went after the data. And the value of data is not in volume, but the problems it can solve. Remember those stats earlier where, like less than 1% of unstructured data was even being looked at. If you don't know what problems your data can solve, or what problems you have, it doesn't matter what data you have. You could have tons of data. You could have petabytes of data, but if you're not solving problems with it, it's just pointless. And it actually is problematic because it opens you up to, data leakage. It opens you up to ransomware attacks. It opens you up to, all kinds of PII concerns and GDPR concerns. Third, problem. Okay, so data scientists went and decided that they would find out what the problem was. Okay, they were going to create the problem. Again, you know where this is going, that I'm going to say that the problem is actually much higher of an urgency. And then culture. It all comes back to the culture. Understanding how to identify business problems that can be solved by data. If it doesn't need to be solved by data, don't do it. Data is expensive. Data scientists are expensive. When you look at this slide, you'll see the order that the story went in, the fable went in, and it's exactly upside down. And for those of you who chimed in early, Reshma and I were talking about Netflix recommendations. I forgot this one. Those of you who are, oh my gosh, why can't I even think of the name of this TV show now? They had this concept of the upside down, and Stranger Things is the name of the show. Sorry, I was having a moment there. And in Stranger Things, they have like this kind of parallel universe called the Upside Down. And I was talking to my kid, who's a huge Stranger Things fan, about this concept. And she was like, oh, well, it's like Stranger Things and the Upside Down. So that's how I've kind of created this idea of the upside down approach to data. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this thing and we're going to completely flip it as my recommended approach for going after problems like this. Okay, so here's what it looks like completely flipped. Start with culture. Culture starts at the top, okay? And it's the thing that sets the organization up for success. I have yet to see a place that has had a successful culture change without it starting from the top. Grassroots stuff is great, but without buy-in of the absolute highest levels of management of a company, it is very difficult to change the culture. I'm not going to say that it never happens. I would love to hear about places where it has, but what you need is from the very top of the company, understanding the importance and the value of data and using data to solve business problems, being a data I'm getting really sick of this term, to be perfectly honest. Oh, we're a data-driven company. Okay, most companies don't know what that means. We'll talk about what that means here in a minute. The problem, not all problems need sophisticated data approaches to solve them. Let's be real here. Like, there are times that Excel solves that problem. Awesome, great. You do not need to hire a team of data scientists to do that. Hire the data scientists when you have that business problem that can only be solved by data and, complex beyond Excel spreadsheets data. Okay, once you've identified that problem, and when you identify that problem, it's important to try and quantify, and this is really hard. I mean, I go to conferences all the time where you have CDOs trying to come up with ways to quantify the ROI of a data solution. It is not easy. You have to try. Part of that is then understanding, how are we collecting the data, creating strategies around collecting it, because that feeds into your calculation of ROI, is understanding what data do you need, how much is it going to cost, where are the gaps, how do we monitor its control and usage. That's the data governance side too. So you have to solve that data governance side and the data engineering side. That's what's in this third line here called data. Okay, you have to solve that before that last thing of people. And go to any CDO conference and you say the words data governance and they will go running for the hills. Why? Because it's hard. Okay, it's there are tools out there, obviously, to help with data governance, but they go running for the hills because they know they've already gotten it wrong, because they did this upside down. They did this in the wrong sequence. Then the people, the data scientists, okay, strategic, sequential hiring. You want these people to be able to hit the ground running from the moment they hire on. If these three things are in place before you hire those people, they have a much higher probability of being able to get started immediately. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about data culture, because it's kind of this nebulous term, and this is taken straight from the Tableau webpage. So let's see, we have collective behaviors, beliefs of people who value, practice, and encourage the use of data to improve decision-making. If data is not being used to make decisions or somehow, drive revenue or something, why do we have it? Data is woven into the operations, mindset, and identity of an organization. Data culture equips everyone in the organization, everyone, with the insights they need to be able to truly be data-driven and tackle the most complex data challenges and business challenges. Okay, so, that's kind of nice marketing speak. Let's talk about what it looks like. Okay, first off, good data culture is a participatory sport with a role for everyone. If you are truly a data-driven business, that means that what you do, your decisions are all backed with data, not with your gut, but with data. Okay, so everyone touches data at some point, whether you're a data scientist, whether you are the executive assistant to the CEO, whether you are in marketing, whether you are in IT, whether you are in HR, everyone in a good data culture touches the data and is involved with the data. There's a role for everyone. It is cultivated and grown over time. And so if we're talking startups, you have the opportunity to start with a good data culture, but most of us don't, are not working for, we are employee number 2 at the company out of somebody's garage here. Most of us are working for companies that existed for a while. And so this idea of data being useful, driving decisions, that is something that is, you don't just wake up one day and say, aha, we're going to do this today. It takes time. And it's a way of thinking. It's not just about tooling. Like, I'm sure that, Tableau, great product, would love you to think it's just about tooling, but it's also about, stopping. You have a business problem that you've been presented with, and you stop and you ask yourself, okay, how would I go about proving this? What biases might I have in my assumptions about the solution here? What data do I need to collect? Really just thinking about the problem in a data-minded way, not even hands on keyboard. This is the gray matter part of the process here. We also have to recognize that not everybody is a data scientist, and that's great. I love that. And we need to look at ways of leveling people up and training them. And I see that there's a question about how can you, what actions can be done to cultivate a data culture? Is it driven by a particular person? Are there different personas that should be engaged differently? I love this. Thank you for that question. So I'm going to try and hit on most of these through the next few slides here. So just bear with me for a second. But let's talk about the who of this question. Is it driven by a particular person? Yes, all. Okay. If you're starting from zero, it starts from the top. Obviously, it's the CEO. But recognizing that not everybody is at the same place with data. The CEO has to decide that it matters to them that the company be a data-driven company. The way CEOs say something matters is they put their money behind it. So that means investing in their employees, investing in, training sessions, is there some course that we could send this person to such that they, level up just a bit on their overall understanding of how to approach a problem with data, how to work with data, things like this. But then it's, this is everybody's responsibility to advocate for the good and appropriate and effective use of data. Okay, strategy specific to data. Okay, so this is more of a management statement here. Higher level managements define the strategies. How many times and I'm specifically thinking about non-tech companies. I've worked in some of those. Can you tell me what your company's data strategy is? Most people can't, because a lot of companies don't have them. And they need to. If you're going to be a data-driven company, you need to have a data-specific strategy. That is the responsibility of management right there. An understanding of how to measure ROI from a data product. Okay, we talked about that. That's very complicated. One of the things that I've noticed in companies that I've worked with is you can tell a company that's at least moving in this direction based on, they're talking about a problem and somebody will say, do we have the data to back that up? So if somebody says, here's how it is, somebody else in the room says, do we have the data to back that up? That's the sign that people are thinking about, that way of thinking that I have here in this third bullet. That way of thinking is shown in that statement. Do we have the data to back that up? Okay, so the identifying the right business problem. If you recall in the data fable, everything came back to the CEO not having a business problem. Okay, what do those business problems look like? And I'm specifically speaking of data science business problems here because this is a data science talk. If the problem can be answered with a simple SQL query, you do not need a data scientist to do it. Okay, you can have an analyst do this, and great. But data science, problems that are right problems for data scientists are those that are going to require more than just SQL. They're going to have modeling involved, whether it's in R or in Python or pick your language of choice. Next thing, it will drive ROI. And it's important to recognize that ROI can be measured in many ways, not just dollars. It could be something like, this made our workforce more efficient, or this decreased our susceptibility to, fill in the blank security problem. So, understanding what the actual the actual driver, whether it's dollars, whether it's efficiency, whatever, number of new users, things like this. It also depends on how you define success. So is success that we have moved the needle on sales 0.5%? Cool. But what that means is you have to state it up front. You have to know up front, we're going to do this. We have this problem. It's a data problem. We've identified that it's a data problem. We're going to use a data science solution on it. And we will know that that data science solution is successful when or if. And you need to be able to fill that out. And until you can fill that out, do not begin work. You want, and this is the role of management, and this is the role of the PMs, is to clearly identify what those things are. Okay, and then again, like I was saying before, in terms of it's not always about dollars, data can contribute in both direct and indirect ways. So the ROI can be difficult to determine. So, what if it's you're providing insights? So you've created some forecast, you're using a profit model to create a forecast of, whatever. That forecast is being used to inform the C-suite, who then uses it to inform strategy or whatever. How do you quantify the ROI on that? That's difficult to do. So you can look at some common measures. You've increased your revenue, you've decreased your cost. You can do direct data monetization. Maybe you're a company who sells your data, faster time to market, freeing up resources, security and compliance. These are all ways that you could measure ROI, but you want to agree on what that is upfront. So, when you had the CEO who was like, oh, let's get people, And then the data scientist, here's a solution to a problem that, you know, didn't really exist. And there was no ROI behind that thing either. It's not like they said to the CEO or, you know, whomever this calendar they got on, they didn't say, hey, look at this number. This number improves our time to market by 50%. They didn't do that. They just created this thing, right? So this is something that the data scientists can do as well, and can learn from, which is to learn how the business works and learn something about business. It's actually what's driving me to go back to school. And I'm not going to admit my age that I'm going back to school, but, you know, I've been working for 20 plus years. So, you know, it's been a while, but I'm going back to school to get my MBA because I think it's really important that data scientists understand something about how business works and how to communicate to business in a language that they are accustomed to and that they understand. Okay, so I want to kind of make a return to this slide here. This was our CEO feeling, you know, that FOMO feeling here. We have a case of history repeating, right? So I'm just going to slightly modify this. You know, I am in trouble. All of my competitors are getting data scientists. If I'm going to remain competitive, I need to hire some too. Oops. Okay, how many of us, and I will claim, you know, I'm part of this. A lot of my work right now is in generative AI, but this is history repeating. I'm seeing a lot of places out there, well, everybody else is doing something with Gen AI, therefore I need to do it as well. Okay, let's everybody take a step back here. Okay, and I want to come back in my slides. Oops, here. Okay, so forgetting the culture part, let's just look at the problem. What is the problem we are trying to solve with generative AI? Is the problem, I want my users, my customers, whatever, to be able to ask questions to something and get answers to a thing. Is Gen AI really the solution to that? Or is it just that you didn't know how to implement Elasticsearch very well? Maybe that information is already out there and you just haven't given your customers the right way to access it. Gen AI does not necessarily solve that problem. And for those who have not created a production system with Gen AI, it is complicated. It is not as cheap as anyone would lead you to believe. It is expensive. It is difficult to maintain. It is difficult to monitor. It is difficult to quantify its behavior and its accuracy. And I mean, I use Langsmith just like everybody else for, you know, measuring LLMs and their, you know, their outputs and stuff like this. I find it a little entertaining that the Gen AI community is letting LLMs measure the performance of an LLM. It seems a little circular, but that is what's going on. But what is that business problem that Gen AI is solving? Now, there are cases where I do see good business problems being solved. Okay, those are the ones that are going to survive. Right now, we are in, if you go look up the Gartner hype cycle, we are in what the Gartner hype cycle would call the peak of inflated expectations. This is where everybody's super excited about a thing and everybody's getting into it. But very soon here, what's going to happen, and this happened with data science circa, you know, I'm going to call it 2012, 2013. All of a sudden, everybody's like, whoa, wait a second. This is not exactly as easy as I thought. And it's more expensive than I thought. And I'm not getting what I want out of it. And people start just taking a big step back and they say, whoa, okay, maybe this isn't the panacea that I thought it was. So you end in the Gartner hype cycle in this thing called the trough of disillusionment. And not all technologies recover from this. Okay, what has to happen in order for technology to recover from this is for somebody to create something useful, not even like the so-called killer app, just something useful. So when I, have this slide here that talks about Gen AI, we are in the peak of inflated expectations. I have seen countless CEOs who are all, charging ahead with this thing. Get me Gen AI experts. They need to have been programming ChatGPT, no joke, programming ChatGPT for 5 years. Okay, I saw a job ad like that. And so we are repeating the exact same problem that we had in the early 2010s in the hiring of data scientists with Gen AI. So, let's think about how can we as data scientists get us out of that upside down approach here. And it's all about us helping people get back to what is the business problem. That is the number one recommendation I can make to you, is what is the business problem. So let's click onto here. This is just kind of a parting quote about data culture from Satya Nadella. And I really like this quote. I'm just going to leave it on the screen here for a second for y'all to be able to read it while I grab a quick sip of water. So Satya talks about that it's not just about deploying technology. It's about changing the culture. So every individual is empowered. How do we empower individuals? Okay. We think about, when the question came in, are there different personas that should be engaged differently? Empowerment, that's a kind of a squishy term. Everybody can empower everybody. Managers have a very important role to play in so-called empowerment. It means bringing people together, IT and developers, creating a cultural shift. Everyone benefits when more people can ask questions and get answers. Who is it that's asking the questions? What type of answers are they looking for? Those are your business problems. What are the problems that people want answers to? Okay, there's your business problem. And when every employee can harness the power of data, this is the investment by the company in leveling everyone up, providing training for everyone in data. So that it's, the power of data, once only reserved for data scientists, can be used for everybody and in common apps. This is a quote from 2014. This is pre-Gen AI, but I think these statements still hold true today. Of what are we empowering? Why? Who? What's involved? How much does it cost? Okay, all questions to ask yourself, and those questions can be asked by anybody in the organization. All right, with that, I'm going to wrap up here. I just want to thank Reshma again for inviting me back to Data Umbrella. It's always fun giving presentations here. Reminder of where the slides are. There is, I think Reshma put in chat the exact PDF to the slides themselves, but there is also a repository that has that PDF in there if you go to my GitHub. So with that, I will just say thank you and open it up for questions.
So I believe you answered the when rubber meets the road, what actions can be done to cultivate a data culture, right?
Yes.
Okay. The next one is, this content is incredible. Do you have a book or course or something where we need to learn from you?
Oh, thank you. I've thought about writing a book about this. I'm having a lot of fun right now, not writing books. So I don't know if there's a publisher, in this session who wants to talk to me. There's my email address. Feel free to reach out. I also am happy to, speak on these subjects to, any variety of places. So it's something that I think is really important and matters a lot to me.
So while we're waiting for people to ask questions, I have a question, which is, when you are looking at data science jobs that are posted and interviewing, are there specific red flags we should look out
for? Does the question relate just to the posting or conversations and interviews as well?
I would say both.
Okay. Well, let's start with the posting. And I've written many job ads for, hiring people. I have interviewed many people. I have interviewed many times. I've applied to many jobs. One of the things, the good job postings, in my opinion, state the problems that you're going to be working on. So, this role is being opened up to help us solve this type of problem. Okay, so let's just say I'm just going to come up with a natural language processing problem. Okay, so then I would expect in a good job ad that they would list things like required and desired skills. As somebody who likes to work in NLP, I know what the typical packages are. Maybe it's Gen AI. I know what those packages are. So I would expect to see those listed out in the required and desired skills. If I see a disconnect there, well, if I don't see a business problem or, some sort of explanation on exactly what you're going to be working on, that's a red flag to me. It's definitely something I would ask about if I got into a call with the hiring manager. I would also, in a call with the hiring manager, want to know things like, what percentage of my time is being spent maintaining old things, developing new things. If it's mostly maintaining old things, to me, that's also a red flag of, okay, so yes, code requires maintenance, but you're hiring a full-time person to maintain something that's, in theory already shipped. So what's that about? Let's see, other red flags. You definitely want to hear from them that they know why they're hiring into this role. What problems are they specifically wanting worked on? I have taken jobs. I'm not going to name places, but I have hired into roles where they didn't. They're like, yeah, data scientists, we're forming a data science team. Great. What are we going to do? And we spent 4 years languishing, trying to find things to do. It's not a great use of time. It's not very fulfilling. Which roles in a company are most prepared to define business problems that can be solved by data? Okay. Oh, this is a great question. So there's a few answers to this one. If you're already in a company, the PM is going to be the one who understands how to go between the business and the data scientists the best. It doesn't mean that they're the ones defining the problems, but they're working with the people who are defining the problems. So they're going to be able to take that business language and convert it into something that is more comfortable for data scientists to understand. But generally speaking, business problems are identified through managers. They identify issues through, different strategy sessions and things like this. So, whether you're talking a first-line manager, a mid-level manager, a senior manager, depends on the size of the company, but those business problems should, in theory, if they're being generated properly, be tied into what is the strategy of the company. Okay, for a manager of a data science team, what are the best ways to advocate for data science? Or to manage expectations of business owners and C-suite about what data science can and cannot do? Wow, we could be here all day on this one. Okay, so the best ways to advocate for a data science team. Again, I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, and I'm gonna come back to business problems. There was this business problem, we solved it, and here's how much better we did. Okay, so not just, I didn't just stop with saying we solved it, put the little check mark next to the thing, quantify, before our solution, our time spent on doing this thing was X. After our solution, we improved it by Y. And by the way, that is a really, really great thing to put on your resume. When, if you're looking for that next role, it's one thing to be able to say, I created a model that, to solve X. It's way better to say, I created a model to solve X that resulted in Y improvement. It means that you understand how to quantify ROI, or at least approach it. And that's a very attractive thing to see in a resume. Managing expectations of business owners and C-suite about what data science can and cannot do. That is hard, because and this was especially true, in our data Fable, where the CEO had that FOMO thing going on. They think, and this is hard, people in this call will understand this. They think that, machine learning is this, it will solve everything. It slices, it dices, it's going to create world peace. It's going to end hunger. It's not. We all know that. But this is about data education. And leveling up is not something that just happens in the lower ranks of the company. It happens everywhere. So if, as a data science manager, you can help level up your upper management and your C-suite. And, it's about explaining to them, here's the pros and the cons of this thing. Here's the drawbacks of this thing. Here is prior to starting off on a project, we would anticipate, if we could get an accuracy of X, we could improve our, whatever by Y. It's about, setting their expectations that, no, we're not going to get 100% accuracy. But, if we can get 85% accuracy, look at how much better that is for us. So it's not about just saying, yes, we can do a thing. It's about making them understand what success is and helping them define success. So I talked earlier about, being able to state up front before you even start work what success looks like. This is part of that conversation. So just really having a very honest conversation with them about what is realistic and what is not. Have you seen smaller companies using data well? Absolutely. I work with some startups in my current role, and just some of the stuff, and I'm on, I can't, state who, obviously, and NDAs and blah, blah, blah. But there are companies out there, and honestly, I think the smaller companies have the opportunity to get it right a lot easier than the bigger ones. Bigger ones, they're a behemoth. You're trying to, boil the ocean. With a smaller company, though, a couple good demonstrations of good use of data, and you got everybody's attention. So I'm thinking about, some startups that I work with, which are like 20 people. And, they are companies that revolve around data. And it's really, I hate to say, when you see it, but like when you walk into a space and you can just say, hey, where's the data for? And what does the data show? And I'm not going to argue data being plural or singular, but, you see just like this constant discussion about the data. And it's not even just in data companies. There are other startups that I work with in completely disparate domains. And it's go collect this, go find out, go measure. And it's just really, it's really refreshing when you've come from a place that doesn't do that back into one that does. So they do absolutely exist. Pop over and check the chat window here real quick.
Last call for questions if anybody has any other questions. So I'll just ask one last question, which I guess is, so bigger companies are not necessarily, using data as well as we might expect?
I don't know that I can make that conclusion. When you got a quote from Satya Nadella like that, talking about data culture, that would certainly point to a higher probability of there being a good data culture at, where Satya at Microsoft. But if you have to change the culture, it's a lot harder to change a place of thousands of people than it is of tens of people. It's absolutely the easiest to do it is when a company is starting up, like I said. Here's a question. Beyond knowledge about more advanced modeling techniques, what differentiates senior data scientists for those more junior in their role? Okay, this is kind of also my answer is going to reflect my time as a professor as well. I spent some time teaching at the University of Illinois. And the question that I would get is, how do you know when somebody's ready to get their PhD, when they're ready to write it up? And it's really obvious to a professor when it happens, because that student starts telling the professor what to do. And like not in a bossy way, but like they actually have an informed and educated opinion and they know what to do next. So when I look at the difference between a senior data scientist and a junior data scientist, the junior data scientist doesn't always know how to get started, what the right approach is. They are, they're needing a lot more input, versus the senior data scientist. They are able to propose, okay, here's the problem, here's a path to solving that problem. So the senior data scientist can delegate those things to the junior data scientist, but the senior data scientist is the one who can take a problem from start to finish and know how to craft a solution for it. That's my opinion, but it's certainly shown itself true in my career.
Well, that is a perfect way to end the webinar. Thank you so much, Claire. It was really, really a wonderful talk. We'll have the video up within 24 hours, and we look forward to seeing everybody at our next event.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the invite.